Welcome to the REROLL Multiple Martial Arts podcast, where we explore the intersections of martial arts, society, and culture. I'm Elliot.
I'm Danny.
And today we're going to talk about sports and escapism, and specifically how, currently in the time of COVID, a lot of, politics is number one in our minds right now. But every weekend there's UFC, almost every week there's Bellator and ONE FC, and there's so many things we can pay attention to, the major sports, Dodgers and Lakers. People are just into it right now because, well, there's nothing to do, you can say, arguably, but also it's something to keep our minds off of some pretty serious issues, and it's kind of nice. I mean, I have to say, I can kind of zone out for a few hours, watching TV on the weekend and not think about COVID and all the serious issues right now. How do you feel, D?
I think it works like the question of where does the field of sports factor? How does it factor into where we are as a country, and I would even argue as a globe? But I think we can even take it further and consider the role of sports in society from an anthropological point of view. I think there's been a lot of people that have looked at sports and really tried to think about, I think you used the word escapism. Like, what does it do? How does it factor into the way that people see themselves, the society, how it functions? And there's a bunch of stuff that I guess, that I'm curious to hear your response to. Like, one of them being is that sports has been a metaphor, a symbol, a place marker for actual combat. So many societies use sports to really replace maybe the actual war and fights that are not possible every weekend, as you mentioned, or as training, so that we argue, for example, some of these awkward patterns of the past where we socialized young boys different than we socialize young girls in the sports realm, and young boys were kind of taught how to play rough. And the argument used to be, well, that was part of the socialization pattern for their adult performances. And that's where my mind is as I think of this question of the role of sports in society, especially now during COVID. I'm thinking about how extensive it is, that analysis of sports and what is it a stand-in for.
Yeah, I think also, yes, I agree with you. And I just wanted to add, sports, even though I framed it as sports as escapism, but at the same time, there is a lot of political awareness in sports, social consciousness, with Kaepernick and all that, and how the NBA is handling American politics or issues going on here in the US with Black Lives Matter, on the court, and the players being a lot more outspoken. But I don't know. At the same time, I think about sports, say in Muay Thai, and the democratic movement that's going on in Thailand. Not many people in Muay Thai or the Muay Thai world or in martial arts are really talking about the democratic movement in Thailand. And I get it. It's a lot. I don't know the politics in Thailand. It's a lot more tied in together, the government and Muay Thai. And so far, like say on Instagram, I've only seen one person make a post about it, and a lot of the Muay Thai fighters that I follow haven't said anything about democracy in Thailand, and I think that's really interesting.
I appreciate your connection to the different ways of thinking about sports. And I was kind of going on this line of thinking about how sports can be itemized as something that is very human. Every society, I don't know when it started. I don't have a specific number, but when I think about, for example, the archaeological records, we can find things that we call play or entertainment that are athletic, and we'll call it sports. And then what I was getting at was that it's a very universal thing, but we are now in a place where sports is a professional entertainment entity or thing, and that's different. So that if you and I are running around jogging, we could call that sports. But if you and I are on a track and field team, that's more organized sports, and I would say changes the game completely. And what you're referencing now is this question of many of us catching um, different talks. One of them saying like sports should be pure, no politics, no social commentary. Just do what you're paid to do. Are you supposed to run with the ball and throw it into a hoop? Just do that. Others are going, no, sports are part of our society. They're an essential fabric of who we are as a community. So if something is happening outside that is not necessarily directly related to sports, it should also come into the sport field. Surprisingly, we don't see it everywhere. And I'm actually curious, um, how do you feel about it? Because I've been catching a couple jujitsu athletes very much vocal online. And one in particular, I won't say his name just because I don't want to give him any hype, but he's super conservative and super, I don't know, just disruptive is the right word. So, for example, I'm going to give an example of why it's difficult. Like, I think we should have different perspectives on, we can have different perspectives on political spectrum, but like when someone says something like, well, this person's life didn't matter, that's a piece of trash. Like that's so visceral and toxic, and like, and then I was reading, the feedback, and everyone's jumping like, dude, what's wrong with you? Like, are you
Mm-hmm.
okay? And this person is going like, and in my mind, I was thinking about like, I was almost being the person that says you're just an athlete, and then I stopped myself going like, no, he's allowed to have his opinion. I just was surprised that it was so, I don't know, like raw, and to me personally against my belief system. So that I was thinking like, we can have debates, on maybe, I don't know, there was this middle range of like, was it appropriate? Was it too much? But to go as far to say like this person's life doesn't matter, they're trash, good that they died. I was like, wow, that is some serious, I don't know, toxic energy. And yet he's an athlete, and I thought, is he going to get hurt by it? And so far, no. He's going to compete. He's going to have his sponsors. And to your point, some athletes say, I will not say a word because I need to pay my bills. I don't want to lose my sponsors.
Wow. It's interesting right now how we started off as sports as escapism, and then but it ties into uh, sports and social consciousness or lack thereof. um, I think what one thing I think is really interesting is like you said, how you're talking about how people I guess position themselves and what types of values people have. I really find it interesting in one FC. Uh, they really highlight the the traditional honor, respect, of martial arts. And while UFC, there's a lot of that WWF, hype stuff, beef. Oh, who are you going to call out? What beef do you have with so and so? To sell a fight. I mean, it sells. But I think it's interesting to see that contrast with two huge organizations. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, the trash talking is fun, but I also really like to see just a nice fight, without the trash talk. How do you feel?
I think the trash talking is directly responding to the community that it is situated in. So that we think about the United States and the current moments. Um, Fighters are, yeah, fighters in boxing and now in MMA are very different than the sports we see in basketball and football. They're both entertainment, and we could talk about sports as a field and escapism and even the symbolic meaning. So that, like I mentioned earlier, um, there's you could probably look it up. I don't have it the author's name, but there's a lot of anthropologists that have looked at like football and how it was symbolic of warfare.
Mm.
So it's a stand-in for a ritualized battle that we get to see, and people aren't dying, but it is symbolic of that actual two armies pushing each other and one of them being victorious over the other. And yet, even within that rhetoric of our analysis, there is very little tolerance for that level of trash talking and violence in those two fields, like basketball and football. But in boxing, you do. They get in each other's faces and they start saying things that are disgusting. Like some boxers are talking about each other's moms, their children, their partners. And you're like, that is something that should never be stated unless you want to get into a fight. And then someone like you would tell me, well, that's what they're gonna do, Danny. They are gonna get into a fight. But still, I'm going like we all know it's a sport. They're millionaires, you know, so they don't have to fake it for us. We know that this is a hype. We know that at the end they're gonna touch gloves and they're not gonna go look for each other after the fight and stab each other. So I find it surprising that why do we have room in boxing and MMA to have that level of, I don't know, just dangerous rhetoric. And I say dangerous in the sense that like in they're fighting words in ways that are not supposed to get squashed at the end. So if you talk about my mom or my children, I'm not gonna hug you after we fight, even if I beat you. I mean, if it was in the street, you know what I mean? So why do they do it?
It's just like Khabib versus Conor. Khabib beat up Conor and went to try to beat up his corner. But I mean, it shows you. I mean, because Khabib said that he's not a trash talking kind of guy. He said he wanted to be a role model and change the sport in that way. But I don't know. There's a lot of hype around UFC drama, so I don't think he really changed the sport in that sense. But I don't know. I think, but at the same time, he's a classy guy. He always shakes hands after, aside from the Conor fight, shakes hands and he's a cool dude. Wore Dustin Poirier's shirt after that competition. But yeah, I mean, even it's interesting that you said that, about the two opposing forces, almost like war. And it's because I see the ONE FC stuff, and they really try to push the honor and respect, and even the trash talking, there's trash talking, but it's still like, oh, I think my skills are better. And even though he's a champ, even though this person's the champion in this country, I believe that I will beat him in the second round or something like that. And I'm like, okay, all right. But I have to say though, it's a lot calmer, and I think there's a lot more legacy stuff in ONE FC. There's a lot of old school mixed with new school, and so I think that's the difference. I mean, UFC it's all new. They're still building building their brand in a certain way. Um, but are we straying too far off of our original topic, sports as escapism? Are we using these dramas to to escape from our regular lives? Because I mean, that's what we do with movies or daytime dramas. We got to spice up our life somehow, if our lives are not as exciting as TV.
So I return to what I said earlier about like thinking about the anthropology of sports. And then I like to consider that the type of society we live in is very different than those that were the majority of contexts 100,000 years ago, even 30,000 years ago. And if you're in the United States, even 200 plus years ago, we had different formats of social political organization or living. And even then, sports gave the community, gave us something to get happy about, to get excited, to escape from. So I want to think about this question. What if sports is is a very human thing, but we have added some major changes, which is sports as a profession, the capitalistic model of compensating your labor is something that didn't exist before. And people that try and say, yeah, but I'm pretty sure those athletes ate better than others. Like maybe sometimes they did, maybe sometimes they didn't, but that's not the same thing as saying, here's $1 million, you know. But anyway, how does that translate to the average Danny or the average Elliot that is working and then says, oh, there's an MMA fight this week and I'm gonna watch it? I think that at minimum, we're being human. We're just being human. We've been human for about 250,000 years. And there's something very creative about the human condition. And I think some of these sports are easier to translate, so that if I take the game of football and I take it back 300 years, some people would be, that's lame. I don't want to watch that. But if I take the sport of boxing or MMA and I take it back 300 years, people would be like, oh, I just did that the other day. You know what I mean? I think there is something very human about the physical contact. And I don't want to be misrepresented. And I'm not saying it's very human to want to beat people up. That's not what I'm saying. Because some people say that. Some people say that the reason why we have escapism in MMA and boxing is that it taps into the human condition for violence. And I go, no, that's not it. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. I feel that there, that some of us can tell that they really are not going to kill each other. In fact, um, I've been able to hear people echo something that I feel, that like, if I really believe that they were going to kill each other or that they really hated each other for real, I wouldn't watch it.
Mm.
You know, because it would turn me off. It'd be like, I don't want to watch that. Someone's going to die in there. What kind of person am I that's going to pay $60 to see a death? You know, like, no, I'm not that person. I know it's fake in the sense that the violence is measured.
Wow. Wow. That's interesting. I feel like, you know, when you were talking about entertainment and sports and violence, I think about, you know, being in the Roman era, and I don't know how much of this is real, but you know, see, you know, some poor dude right in the middle, and they let in some tigers and lions and stuff who haven't eaten in 5 days, and they're gonna tear this dude up, and people are cheering. Oh my gosh, you know, and or you know, back in the day, you know, um, I mean, present what we would consider Latin America would be, you know, I forgot. It's like the ball going through the hoop, and whatever team loses, they die. I'm like, wow, you know. So it's wild. Or you know, in kung fu, where back in the day, yeah, people died. people died in competitions. And so we've evolved as human beings, you know, from death to you know, whatever ounce gloves that you want to fight in, and you know, to bare knuckle boxing, which I think is kind of cool. But okay, so we've discussed these things are innate. It's not necessarily escapism then. It's something that's, you know, as humans, we've always gravitated through that in our history of our lives.
I would say that maybe the question is, how do we apply a definition to escapism? Because
Okay.
there's
Okay.
two places that I think we can look at it. One is anytime you find yourself entertained with a story. So you're around the fire, you know, you're camping, and someone starts telling you this awesome story. You're entertained, you're enthralled, you're fascinated, you're not even drinking your drink anymore. You're not chewing, you're just like, wow, tell me more. At that point, I could argue escapism. But that's different than saying, I'm not happy with the life I live and I live vicariously through other people.
Mm,
Escapism.
mm,
I'm saying probably both, but I feel more confident saying that the human condition likes to be entertained. If I can walk up to a community and athletically start juggling something or running really fast and they stop what they're doing to look at me, I think I'm getting close to the type of thing that I'm talking about in sense of sports as being universal. But I think you are more clear in what you mean say when you say things like we don't live like that anymore. We live in a society where we're working 9 to 5 or 9 to 9, and our lives are routine to the point that like nothing changes very little. They feel almost identical, and that's something that I would argue is quite unique to where we are right now, especially under COVID. And then how does sport allow us to live a life that is different than us? And I think there's something there. In fact, I would love to kind of hear your thoughts about this question. Do you think that's why we watch fighting? Like, we've been talking about this conversation of martial arts. What is it? What are the different ways you can talk about it? But martial arts, some of them don't compete and others are primarily competition. So how do you think, we can talk about that idea of like martial arts as, I don't know, as a symbolic vicarious placement of our mind or our energy or our ego? I don't know.
I like your perspective. You know, if I mean, to me, it is entertainment, and I'm in some way living vicariously through these people. You know, it's like, wow, like I'm not able to do that, but I respect these people who are putting their lives and their health on the line. Um, I think, but okay. So training to compete or training. Okay, I've been really into paying attention to combat sports these past several months because I can't go to the gym, and I see these people's skill set, and I'm just amazed by it. And I'm like, I wish I could do that in another life. But at the same time, I'm like, man, it's tough to be a fighter. It's hard. And seeing these people's stories. I mean, these people came through so much adversity, so much just to be in the position that they are, or seeing. I don't know. It's a lot of respect, I guess, too. You know, seeing like top level Thai fighters who make as much money as the average American, I think, and you know, they're not flaunting expensive cars. You know, they're on their motorbikes, and you know, they got a new Honda, and that's like pretty cool. And so I don't know. It's a lot of learning for me. And yeah, I mean, it has to be. It's, man, entertainment. I mean, dude, seeing someone get choked out, someone knocked out, precision, getting their legs, you know, all bruised up. I think it's awesome. I can't say it. Okay, I'm just gonna say I love watching fighting. It's awesome. There's nothing to it, getting two people fighting each other, beating each other up. Man, that's like the best thing in the world. And there's nothing more exciting, yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. Basketball is great, exciting. Football, baseball, it's just like a trend that I kind of follow. I'm a bandwagoner. Yay, Dodgers, right? But man, it's combat sports. It's the jam. I don't know what else to say. I'm excited about it. I'm so excited. Yeah, it's like the teams. I don't know. It just gets the whole drama, the whole web of people. It's like musicians. Oh, this person trains with this person, and there's a whole web. It's amazing.
I think most people would agree with you that like combat sports are one of those few sports that you can immediately say I don't like it, but you can also immediately say like what is that? Because what you recognize is like it's two people um trying to inflict damage on the other. And um I don't know, I think there's something very very basic, and I don't say that to be disrespectful to combat sports of boxing, MMA, even the karate spaces. um I just say that like people can recognize a punch and a kick without knowing the name for to it. They don't have to know it's a crescent kick, a reverse roundhouse kick, a roundhouse, an axe kick. They don't have to know that to know like, wow, that person got knocked out with that leg hitting them on the face. And then I think about what you just said. I think that's very different than the games of like team sports. But I find the question about like, is it escapism significant? Because I think it's all escapism. Like, I'm a big movie buff, and I would probably say, yeah, I like having a really good movie, having some popcorn, tuning out. And I will tune out. Like, if you're sitting next to me, I probably will forget when you leave. I won't notice that you left because I just went into the movie. I escaped into it. And that's, I think sports happens the same thing. Like what boxing, have you ever gone to a boxing match? I find it more fun to look at the crowd. I got a chance to go to a couple of boxing matches, but also here at the Soboba Casino area, there used to be King of the Cage matches, and I went there, and I was like, "Whoa, this crowd is more fun to watch." And what I thought interesting, going back to what you said, or you said you posed this question of like escapism, and I posed the other question of like living vicariously through it. Um, it was a little bit uncomfortable to see how amped up the people were. Like after the fight, I was scared. And I'm not using that word lightly. I was concerned that I was like, as I was walking back, people felt they looked like everybody wanted to fight. It was weird. They were so pumped. And I was like, whoa, like I want to make sure I don't make any eye contact. Just get to the car. Because I know that usually like after these big events, yeah, uh sadly, like after the Super Bowl, the statistics of like people inflicting violence upon their partners goes up.
Wow.
Why does that happen? And I think that it goes because they were emotionally triggered by what they saw. And it's football. I can only imagine. Or maybe it's different. Maybe it's completely different with combat sports. Maybe you let it out. I don't know. I'm just thinking about what you said, living vicariously.
Yeah, I went to a couple of Bellator events, and I didn't feel really threatened or maybe it was a different context. I don't know. I didn't feel that. I mean, it was hella testosterone. I mean, guys, just a bunch of dudes everywhere, like, but it's funny. It's really funny. It's a trip because I'm not used to that. I mean, I guess like if you go to like a rock concert and it's like 90% dudes, but yeah, I didn't feel that people were gonna beat each other up, or maybe I was just too yeah, maybe I didn't pay attention to it. Maybe I was just excited. Um, I don't know. I don't know. It didn't seem that. Yeah, I didn't feel that. But I know that there's a lot of restaurants who don't play. Don't do UFC pay-per-views because of fights that happen. So yeah, definitely fights. And speaking of testosterone and all that, hypermasculinity, I think it's always great to see fighters show human emotion. Just like when after Khabib, beat Justin Gagey, man, he just a flood of emotion. You even Uriah Hall versus Anderson Silva. Uriah Hall, he was super emotional. Like, and I think it's great to see that. I mean, I think it's super healthy and necessary for guys, especially to see that, because there's not enough of tough guys showing emotion. And um, I'm happy that these people. I mean, whether they like it or not, they're role models, and they're I like that these role models are showing their human side.
I agree. I think that's something that is awkwardly contained so that we have been seeing. I feel optimistic about how we've been tearing down certain stereotypes of masculinity. Um, in my own lifetime, I remember being a little kid and being told, like, don't cry, man up. And um, I know there's people still saying that. I've actually caught that, within the last 2 years as a witness of actually a mom telling a little boy, man up, don't cry. But I know that everyone was like, what's wrong with you? In our minds, we were just like, whoa, like, did you not get the memo? Like, we let that go. But surprisingly, I want to say something that's going to sound odd. I think the MMA fighters get a free pass because they have just done something that has quote unquote proven that they're not, I don't know what word you would use that would be able, because any word I would say is disrespectful.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but I'm just thinking about that sense. Like I feel almost like I don't think we broke. I don't think we broke ground. I think we just said they get a free pass.
Oh, um, yeah. I don't know what to say after that. Um,
Well, I'm curious. I mean, do you think they get a free pass, or do you think it's just like, no, this is what's going on? Like, we're seeing men being able to say, I think about my dad right now, and I'm gonna cry.
both. No, but both. Because I was reading some Instagram comments, and there's a lot of people on there that said that they were emotional, or some guys were like, I was just about to cry, or like still trying to show that they were manly enough, but that yeah, it affected a lot of people. I had a friend text me and said, yeah, he got teary eyed, and and I think I don't know anybody who says that they didn't feel emotional. Geez, I don't believe them. That was too. I don't know. I don't want to say beautiful, but like, man, after that triangle with Khabib, and then just like, and finding out that that was his dad's favorite submission, and it all made sense, and I yeah, I. I don't know what else to say, but I agree with you. It's yeah, he does get a free pass. tough guy, but also it's okay to cry, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that moment. It was difficult because I was um taken aback. I didn't expect it. Not because he did anything inappropriate, but I saw the fight. I saw the transition, and I was with my daughter, and I'm telling her, like, this is textbook jujitsu. Like, in fact, in my old dojo, that transition that you saw, we would drill it. That's how you get it. So that's a transition because you're going for the armbar. The person's gonna try and escape, and it's gonna give you the head and arm triangle. In fact, that's how we would say it. They're gonna give you. They never give you anything, but that's what they say. And he did it, and I was like going crazy, screaming like, I can't believe I saw this in an MMA fight. And he wins, and then he moves over toward the center, and he just breaks down. And then I'm quiet. I'm quiet with my daughter, and I'm just going like, I'm literally saying pobrecito, like poor, like my heart is with you, like dude, because it hit me. I think my daughter asked me like, why is he crying? And I was like, because of his dad. It must be because they hadn't said yet anything yet, but at that point I was speculating because we had been seeing all these reports of people asking him, talk about your dad. And he himself was already tired. Like, stop asking me about my dad's passing. Anyway, so I'm telling her that, and I'm just like going like, I can only imagine, you know? So I feel that like those moments are where we intersect back to the talk we started. Like, sports is a fabric. It's part of the fabric of our society. And this idea of like the sports drama, I think it's life, so that if people get upset that like an athlete has a political statement, it's because they're human. They're part of our culture. They're not these extraterrestrials that come in just to play and leave. And when we see people have feelings that don't coincide with what just happened because they're athletes, I think we understand now, like, oh yeah, they're a complete human being. They're not just these machines that are there to inflict pain on the other.
Well, with that said, this has been the REROLL Multiple Martial Arts podcast, where we talk about the intersections of martial arts society and culture. Until next time.